the 130 calendar, page 2, in custody, D'Angelo.
Is Joseph James D'Angelo your true and correct legal name? I'm sorry? Yes.
Hey everyone, good morning. Welcome to Keto and Crime, Thought Crime, and Keto Comic. Today we've got the beginning of a new series of episodes I'm going to be doing where I bring in friends that have studied cases, comedians, actor friend of mine that have studied cases. Even a retired police officer will be joining us for one. And they've studied these cases, and they're going to give us their spin on it, so you're not just listening to my opinions. So all these episodes are going to be a little bit longer or split into two parts. They're going to be longer podcasts or split into two parts for YouTube or BitChute. But basically, it's going to be a normal episode where I relay the facts of the case to you, and then the second part will be an analysis by my friends and I as we discuss the case and hopefully throw some humor into it because some of these cases are a little bit of a downer. So hope you're going to enjoy that. And if I haven't told you already, it is the holiday season. So if you're watching this within a few days of release, happy holidays. If it's in the future and it's not near the holidays, just ignore that part. But let's get into it. Today's case, the Golden State Killer. This is an interesting one. This is something I've studied and followed for a very long time, and I hope you find it as interesting as I do. In part 2, my good friend Ian Lasky from Los Angeles will be joining me. He is an actor that has been in several movies. I'll let him give off his resume, his IMDb, so to speak. But he's spent a lot of time studying this case, too, and he has some interesting thoughts on it. So let's get into it. Golden State Killer. The Golden State Killer was a criminal that rampaged the entire state of California for about 12 years that we know of, documented years. It could have been going on longer or even before 1974. But he terrorized them in what we call 3 different eras. First is the Visalia Ransacker, which was a cat burglar that vandalized over 100 homes in the Visalia, California area. It's near the Central Valley, getting into Northern California, by robbing over 100 homes. And he would do it very blatantly, because it started out just a normal cat burglar situation, but then the criminal got bolder. And instead of just sneaking in and stealing your stuff when you're not there or when you're asleep, trying not to wake you up, he would literally do it, wake you up, and make you watch as he ransacked and stole from you. So a very either stupid or sociopathic type of criminal that is willing to take those kind of risks. But I guess he got some kind of psychological thrill off of it, but he always liked people to know he was in their home toward the end of his era as a burglar and the Visalia Ransacker. Because not only would he steal your stuff, he would absolutely demolish the inside of your house. The second era was in the Stockton, Sacramento, Modesto area, which is a little bit further up in Northern California, as the EAR, or the East Area Rapist. Over the span of about 6 years, this criminal raped 50 women that we know of, documented, and these women range in ages from 13 up to 40. I mean, a rape is one of the most horrible crimes I think that anyone can perpetrate on somebody. And to have a person commit that many in the style that he did is mind-boggling, because like his time as the Visalia Ransacker, he got bold about being a rapist. He would not just target women that were there alone. He moved up to women that were there with their children. He would often tie the children up and make them watch as he raped their mother. And then he got to the point he would specifically go there when their husbands were home, and he would restrain the husband and actually make the husband listen or watch while he violated his wife. He had a very interesting way of restraining husbands. He would literally put them in another room, tie them up, put them on their stomach, and stack plates, books, something that would cause a clatter if it moved, on top of their back, and told them if he heard the plates or the books fall, he would automatically kill the woman. No questions asked. and then come and kill them and kill any kids that were in the house. So he terrorized Northern California for many years doing this. And I apologize, I should have put a disclaimer on this video, but we're going to discuss some pretty graphic things, so just bear with us. And then finally, he moved to the Southern California area near Valencia, LA, Santa Cruz, not Santa Cruz, I'm so sorry, Santa Carla, Santa Barbara, that area in Northern and Southern California, where he was known as the original Night Stalker, and he was both a rapist and a murderer, murdering about 13 people in the area. And it was in 2001 that finally DNA evidence linked the East Area Rapist to the original Night Stalker together. And then it was after the arrest of a suspect that they put 2 and 2 together and also realized he was also the Visalia Ransacker. So 3 different stages of evolution. Cat burglar to rapist to murderer and rapist. And this went on, like I said, over a span of about 12 years. But it took up until 2017, 2018 for an arrest to actually be made. The term Golden State Killer was not coined until 2013. He was still known under 3 different names, sometimes more. Visalia Ransacker, East Area Rapist, and the original Night Stalker in Southern California. It wasn't until crime writer Michelle McNamara, on video pictured here with her husband, comedian Patton Oswalt, actually took an interest in the case and coined the term Golden State Killer, because she had a suspicion that he was responsible for more crimes. And as I said, in 2001, DNA evidence finally linked the original Night Stalker to the East Area Rapist. So she came up with a better, I think, descriptive for the criminal, the Golden State Killer, because he terrorized all of California. He got Southern California, Central Valley, and Northern California. So no area of California was untouched by this person. So she coined that. Michelle McNamara was a longtime crime writer. She wrote crime novelization. She also hosted the podcast True Crime Diary. And in her own words, she became obsessed with this case. She read and she followed everything. She interviewed police officers from all the police departments that actually worked on it, trying to put together her own profile of the criminal. I apologize. My mother-in-law's cat, her Russian Blue, was walking through the house carrying her 2 dead toy dinosaurs, screaming for my mother-in-law, who's just left to go to her job. My mother-in-law's an RN and a cancer researcher. I think I've had her on videos before. But she had gone to work, and this cat was literally walking over the house crying for her. It's kind of sad, but anyway, I apologize for the ring in the background. So she literally became obsessed with this case. She read it. She interviewed tons of people that had worked on the case. She put together her own profile of the criminal and began working on a book called I'll Be Gone in the Dark, which is the complete case of the Golden State Killer. She worked on it with a couple of different people. Paul Haynes, also pictured here next to her in Patton Oswalt's picture for those on video, was one of her chief researchers on the book. He helped Patton Oswalt finish the book after her death, which we're about to discuss. And she also worked with this other gentleman pictured here, Paul Holt, who was a Contra Costa sheriff's deputy who took an interest in the case and was actually the one that, using what he had discussed and outlined with both Haynes and McNamara, used to kind of pinpoint and find the suspect that was arrested. As I said, Michelle McNamara passed away before the publication of her book. She had it about 2/3 written when she passed away unexpectedly at the age of 47, April 21st, 2016. Evidently, she had a undiagnosed heart issue, had medicated herself with Xanax the night before, and as well as has drunk some wine. Never a good idea to mix alcohol and drugs, people. But she passed away in her sleep. And it is said to be from the reaction of the alcohol and the Xanax with an undiagnosed heart problem. Patton Oswalt, of course, was devastated. After a period of grieving, he did what a good husband would do or a good spouse would do. He, together with her co-writer, finished her book and published it posthumously for her in 2018. And if you haven't read I'll Be Gone in the Dark, it is a great read. You can also find it on Audible, which is how I listen to it, with it being narrated to you. And you can also find hardback Kindle editions. It's a great read. If you're interested in this case, it is the signature book on the Golden State Killer. It's also going to be made into a miniseries from HBO and exploring the case, because she was obsessed, and she told her husband that she, in her lifetime, wanted to see the Golden State Killer arrested and punished for the havoc and horrible crimes he had committed. And she was dedicated to finding his ass. So Patton Oswalt was happy to publish her book posthumously. All right, so Paul Hull took it to another level after the publication of this book. He started wondering, what with DNA evidence linking, they had the DNA evidence from 2001 that linked the East Area Rapist with the original Night Stalker. They had that evidence, so he wondered if there wasn't some sort of database out there where you could compare the DNA that the police had taken in 2001 with a database of existing DNA to possibly get a family tree for the Golden State Killer. And he started studying the genealogy websites such as 23andMe, those types where you can send, you know, a swab and they'll tell you where your ancestry comes from and help you construct a family tree. He went that route, and he finally got a couple of those companies to say they would work with him if he could find his own geneticists, his own DNA scientists to actually do the comparisons, that they would supply him with a bunch of samples, because they too, the two that who shall remain nameless, the two that he worked with, said they would too would like to find this Golden State Killer and see him brought to justice. So he started a nationwide hunt for somebody willing to do the analysis, and he found scientist Barbara Ray Ventnor, who was a longtime DNA expert and biologist that was willing, hematologist, who was willing, forensic scientist, willing to do the comparisons between this battery of samples that these genealogy companies were willing to let him work with, to compare to the DNA that was found in 2001 that linked the East Area Rapist with the original Night Stalker. So she agreed to do the work, and she started doing it. It took her a couple of years to put everything together, but she eventually found a match that pretty much led her to believe it was probably a second or third cousin.
And most certainly, I want to emphasize it was a team effort. You know, I initiated the process that led to identifying him, but I could not have accomplished it without other individuals actually contributing greatly to the process.
Were you the one who said DNA is probably going to bring us the person?
I had another case which exposed me to the technology that we used, and educated myself on how that could possibly be applied to the Golden State Killer case. And then in essence, I needed a DNA source, so I went on what I call a roadshow, where I went to the agencies that had DNA samples from the Golden State Killer, trying to sell this possible strategy. And fortunately, Ventura DA's office said, we will let you use our DNA. And that agency stepping up to the plate and doing that allowed us to get to the point where we are today in identifying DeAngelo.
I'm a little confused. So were you the one who suggested we look on Jed?
GEDmatch.
Was that you?
GEDmatch.com. That was me. And I was the one that uploaded the Golden State Killer's profile into GEDmatch.com.
Ventura was the only one that gave you a DNA?
They were the ones that were willing to do that. So, you know, there's only a few samples in the series in which there was enough and Ventura fortunately had enough for us to be able to use.
And when did you upload his DNA into GEDmatch?
That was January of this year.
So it takes a while, right? I mean,
well, we got results within a day, but it's doing the genealogy side that is very laborious and time-consuming.
because it only brings you a pool. It doesn't go right to him.
That's exactly it. It brings us a pool of people, and it turns out the closest people related to him that we found were on the order of third cousin
to the committer of these crimes in that database. Now, this all rested on the fact that either the Golden State Killer himself or somebody in his family had sent their DNA into one of these genealogy sites. So it was still a long shot, but she found what she thought was a match along the area of it being a cousin. And with that, Paul Hull worked with police to help find this person. During his work as a deputy sheriff near where this gentleman, pictured here, for those of you on video, Joseph James DeAngelo lived, he had been called to Mr. DeAngelo's house several times for different incidents, mainly because he was very verbally abusive to his neighbors. He actually called one of his neighbors at one time, threatening to kill them because their dog was barking. He was seen by neighbors out in the front yard many times, talking to himself, saying, "I will kill you, I will kill you," just weird behavior. And as a result, they really, he had a suspicion that this gentleman may be who they were looking for, and he had to get a sample of the DNA from this gentleman for them to actually compare. So he kind of, he went and questioned him about some incidents. He kind of stalked around his house and waited to get some evidence with the gentleman's DNA. And he finally found it in the form of a Coke can and some Kleenex in his garbage. And I know there's a whole thing about privacy there, but that's what happened. He got the DNA, he took it, it was compared, and it came up as a match for being in the same family line as the DNA that had been notified might be a cousin of the Golden State Killer. And as a result, James Joseph DeAngelo became their #1 suspect. Joseph James DeAngelo was born in Bath, New York, November 8th, 1945. He was born to Joseph James DeAngelo Sr. and Kathleen Bassano, who, not much information on his father, but his mother was a waitress. It is said that he witnessed his younger sister's rape when she was 7 years old in a warehouse by 2 gentlemen, and that scarred him for life. I can only imagine. And from the time that happened up to present day, he had started to show strange behavior, such as talking to himself, kind of having a misogynistic and unhealthy attitude towards women. So it kind of changed him, and not for the good, as you can imagine. Eventually, the family moved to California, where he attended Folsom High School in the Sacramento area. He did attend college. He joined the Navy right after high school, spent some time in the Navy, honorable discharge, came back to Northern California, attended the Sierra College, graduated with a poli-sci degree, an associate's degree in poli-sci with honors. It was at this time he met another student, Bonnie Jean Caldwell. The two became engaged, but Bonnie called off the engagement shortly thereafter because of verbal and physical abuse. After leaving, after the engagement broke off, he did attend Sacramento State University and College of the Sequoias, where he got both a degree in criminal justice as well as credits towards the police academy. And in 1976, he became a police officer in Exeter and Auburn, California. Very close together in the number of years he served. It was during this time that he was a police officer, 1976 to about 1979, that nearby Visalia, California, started experiencing a rash of cat burglaries. This is when the Visalia ransacker was in his heyday. So you had this gentleman, a Navy veteran, and a police officer living in the area when all these robberies and burglaries were taking place. He was actually caught in 1979, about the time that those burglaries kind of subsided. He was caught shoplifting some very strange things from a hardware store, namely rope or cord, the same kind that was had been used to secure some of the victims of the ransacker. He was also just some strange things that should have been indicative to any police officer. There's more going on here. But because he was a police officer, he was fired in 1979, and the burglary stopped because they moved from the area about that time. He had met an expiring lawyer, Sharon Marie Huddle, in 1973. They got married, had 3 daughters. Along the years, they did leave. After he was fired from being a police officer, they left the Northern California area, moved closer to Southern California in the Citrus Heights area in 1980. And the burglary stopped, ironically. It was around this time they suspect he graduated to being the East Area rapist, starting to rape women, around 50 women in the Sacramento and Northern California, Stockton, Modesto area of California, while he was a police officer, while he was still in the area. He graduated to rape. And as I said before, he was he was a sociopath. He wanted to make sure that their families were also humiliated. He would tie the husbands up, put plates and books on their back, tell them that if he heard them, he would automatically kill the mom. He raped one woman while her young daughter was sleeping in the bed next to her. Many of the witnesses would say later that the liberties he took were unbelievable, that he would, after the deed was done, he would stay in the house. He would drink beer that was in the fridge. He would go out on the patio, pop a beer, sit down. He wore a mask the entire time, so nobody really knew who he was. He would have a beer, have some dinner, linger in the house, rummage through things, ransack the house, much like his heyday as being a cat burglar, and would disappear. Many of his rape victims said during the act they would hear him whisper strange things like, "I hate you, Bonnie. I hate you," alluding back to his broken off engagement. So there's a lot of evidence outside of the old DNA evidence that's stacking up against Mr. DeAngelo. There were another young lady whose mom had been raped, said that after it was over, her mom thought he was gone. She actually asked her daughter, "Are you okay?" And she said, "I was only 9, but I remember distinctly saying, 'Mommy, he's still here. Be quiet.'" And sure enough, as soon as she said that, a masked figure came forward out of the darkness, pressed down on the bed, letting them both know he was still there, and then walked out. He would also call his victims after it was over and say cryptic things like, "Remember when we played?" He was definitely a maniac, a psychopath and a sociopath to no level. Along all this time, his wife did graduate from law school in 1982. His job history from the 80s was pretty non-existent. He either was unemployed or doing under-the-table odd jobs. We don't have a record of any employment from him until later on in 1990, right about the time his wife divorced him in 1991. He actually took a job as a diesel truck mechanic with Save Mart Supermarkets, and his job said he was a model employee. He was always on time. He was friendly, even though he did still have a habit of talking to himself and just overall being weird. After the divorce, he left Citrus Heights and moved closer to L.A., moving in with his youngest daughter and her child. So he was living with his daughter and his granddaughter at the time of his arrest. But it was here that he started exhibiting more strange behavior, and here that Detective Hull kind of started investigating some of the many domestic and neighbors disputes that went on, and eventually got the DNA evidence that linked him to being the East Area Rapist and the original Night Stalker. Mr. DeAngelo was known as never really driving a car. He rode a bike everywhere. In fact, during most of the crimes that he is accused of, car tracks was never found. Neither were footprints, only bike tracks. So he was using bicycles to get to and from his crimes as well. And usually stolen bicycles, so they could never be tracked back to him. So he was, by all accounts, very physically fit. He was in his 70s at the time of his arrest, but most of his neighbors said he appeared to be in the same physical health as a 50-year-old. I mean, very good health for his age. He was living, as I said, with his daughter and granddaughter at the time of his arrest. He was arrested on April 24th, 2018 by the Sacramento County Sheriff's Office. And the Santa Barbara County District Attorney's Office charged DeAngelo with 8 and then an additional 4 counts of first-degree murder and rape, May 10th, 2018, and we are still waiting for the results of that trial. He is all of a sudden disabled, even though, by all accounts, he was in good physical shape.
All right, Your Honor, on the 130 calendar, page 2, in custody, DeAngelo.
Is Joseph James DeAngelo your true and correct legal name? I'm sorry? Yes.
He rode a bike. He had both a recumbent stationary bike in the house that he lived. He also rode a regular bike outside. He did yard work in very good shape. Now all of a sudden, coming to his trial, he's in a wheelchair, stares straight ahead, dead blank look, doesn't appear to be mentally there. So many people believe this is an act he's putting on not to be convicted in his old age. His ex-wife has put out a kind of a statement saying that her and her children know nothing about his crimes. Please respect their privacy and leave them alone. So that's kind of where we stand with the Golden State Killer. Linked by DNA evidence, strange behavior, MO, riding a bike, voice scans of the phone calls and stuff he received, that former victims received, also linked back to him. So we have a good case against this guy. Is he really the Golden State Killer? I'm going to lean toward yes. Of course, that could be just hopeful thinking that it's finally over. But that's where we stand with the case of the Golden State Killer. And that's where I'm going to end part 1. I'll be back next time with my good friend Ian, and we'll discuss more about the case, hopefully bring to light some facts you didn't know, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks a lot, guys. Until then, Keto Comic.